Well then, welcome everybody. I hope you have a most pleasant day. I hope people can hear me one way or another. But yeah, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. With me there's also Almagus. And
Hello.
hello. And well, we'll need to know the name for the boy. I think we already have it established. It was Pepsi, wasn't it?
Yes, indeed, Pepsi.
Alrighty, I would suggest let's just start in 3, 2, 1, let's go. So, welcome everybody. Just a quick introduction to the game and the run itself. So, this is Secret of Mana, a action RPG for the Super Nintendo from, I think, 1993? Probably depends on where you live, I suppose, what year it is. Either way, this is a game that a lot of people that played it in their childhood really like and, well, got to know, so to speak. And this is a bit of an unusual run for, well, a speedrun marathon, because it's more of a challenge run rather than a true speedrun in the traditional sense, although I am trying to go fast, obviously. Now, what we are going to be doing for this here is, this is not going to be a glitchless run. I will be using glitches, but I will only be using one character for, well, as much as the game allows me to. There's going to be some passages and gates where I need to have the other characters open them. I will also need them alive in order to access various, well, travel utilities like cannon travel. And yeah. So the basic gameplay is, well, action RPG, you have a character, you run around, you slash things, and you level up. That's kind of pretty much what you expect. There's going to be more details about that, and we have plenty of time to talk about certain sections of that. But yeah, once again, we have Magus here on the microphone, so welcome Magus, how are you doing today?
Good morning. I am doing pretty okay. I got a coffee with me for the next 5 hours, so I better divide that properly. But yeah, doing alright. Pretty excited for this run.
Nice. Can you try Control R real quick? Because you sound a bit roboty on my end. I'm not sure how that's it.
I sure can.
Thank you. Alrighty. So, the quick plot to this game so far is, the little boy here, they are just playing in a place of the forest where they shouldn't. He fell on the log and, well, now he needs something in order to cut down the bushes in order to get back home. So he finds the sword in a stone. Well, not ominous at all. And, well, we pull it out, and suddenly we see ghosts. This one here is going to tell us that, actually, I think we learned this later, that this is technically the boy's father. But let me put it this way, we are not going to be paying too much attention to the plot itself. It is, well, it's not bad, but it's also nothing too special for what we know nowadays for gameplay plots. The main draw of this game here really is just how we're going to be playing this, and we're going to be playing this as a solo character challenge run, which means I will try to do everything, well, as much as possible with just one character, and there's a lot more possible with just one character than what you might be initially aware of. So, worth noting that I'm going to defeat a few rabbits here. They try to jump me and harm me, and they will give me just very little experience. They are almost not worth it to defeat for experience, but I'm just trying to optimize my experience gain for getting certain levels as well as certain weapon experience. So there's two different kinds of experience in this game. One is a weapon experience, where once you level up your weapon to the next level, you can charge it up to, well, whatever level you might have the weapon at, and unleash a charge attack. Each charge level is 50% more damage, but it takes quite a long time to actually charge up your weapon. Also, I just made a mistake. Good job. We will actually pretty much lose like 3 or 4 minutes later now because of it.
I was gonna say something, but too late.
I'm a doofus. That's fine. Either way, the other type of level is your traditional character level, where you get a bit of HP, a bit of defense, a bit of attack power, and stuff like that, as you might expect. Also, as we return back to the village, monsters have appeared everywhere, and of course we are being accused of being the one that unleashed the monster because apparently the sword was protecting everybody. Well, they should have told us about that beforehand, so we would know about them. Either way, welcome to the first boss. This is the Mantis Ant, and despite this being the first boss, it's actually not particularly easy to defeat efficiently and quickly, especially without getting killed along the way. The fastest strategy is to just stand in front of it and slash before you get hit. And I'm actually getting pretty lucky here overall. So, after we defeat each boss, we gain an orb. In this case, it's going to be a sword orb. These orbs are used in order to upgrade weapons. And especially for a solo character run, I will be upgrading weapons in a variety of manners, because that makes them stronger as well as allows us to level them up further. Right now, the sword can be only leveled up to a maximum of level 1 with the character, and that's it. Once we upgrade it at a smith, we will be able to start leveling it up towards level 2. And that's going to come into play a little bit later. So, next up, basically, in short, here we learn that we are probably going to be the chosen hero. We need to seal the 8 mana seeds around the world in order to defeat whatever evil that is cropping up, and that's going to be the plot. Something like that. We're also banished from our home village here, and, well, I suppose that doesn't make a whole lot of a difference, although we will be returning back here in a bit of an unusual way later. So, what we're going to be doing here is we're just going to run over to the Water Palace, where we are going to be introduced to more plot. And along the way, I'm going to try and defeat some more enemies along the way, reasonably efficiently, hopefully. However, I'm also going to try and avoid encountering enemies. So, quick note. In Seeker of Mana, there can only be a maximum of 3 enemies on the screen or loaded at any given point. This screen here is actually a bit unusual in that the maximum enemies you can load is actually 2, because there is one particular entity that is always loaded in that screen. We're not gonna see it in this run here, but this one screen is kind of the exception to the rule of 3 for this game. So just as a heads up. So, and this is gonna be a decently lengthy cutscene. At that point, I would like to mention that you can still donate towards what the names of the sprite as well as the name of the lady is supposed to be. As well as there is an incentive to make this a true solo character challenge in the end, where I'm going to invest a little bit of time at the end to remove the other characters from the party, so we are truly alone for a final set of enemies. So if you'd like to see that and how it works, well, there's still quite a bit of time until we arrive there. And thank you for the good luck and welcome everybody. Alrighty, what am I forgetting? I'm always forgetting something. Aside from already forgetting to do the first save earlier.
I was gonna say, that's the one thing you forgot. I think we're good.
Alright, yeah. So as a heads up, this run here has a pretty generous estimate. This kind of assumes that I'm gonna die to the final boss and have to redo the last 20 minutes pretty much. Because it's a possibility, and it's not gonna be easy to defeat them. I have to admit, in none of the practice runs so far I have died to the final boss at all, but at the same time, there's always that possibility. So here we seal the first seed, the Mana Seed of Water. This is a plot device which allows us to level up magic that we would acquire later to the next level, but because this is a solo character challenge run with the boy, we're actually not going to level up magic at all, so we're just gonna use magic in order to open up passages, and that's it. But also, those seeds, also let me save real quick, and then reset, because that's slightly faster. These seeds also actually give you a little bit of attack power, so previously I would have dealt 19 damage with the sword, now it's going to be 20 damage with the sword. I also have slightly more defense and slightly more attack power. Basically they just power you up ever so slightly if or whenever you seal another mana seed. So it's not just a plot device, but it actually makes you slightly stronger. That's kind of neat. So next up, we're going to go to Gaia's navel, where the dwarves live. And before we do that, there's going to be a pretty lengthy buy sequence where we're going to do some shenanigans, let's put it that way. So, effectively the first glitch is going to come up in just a moment. And some of you might be aware of being able to generate corrupted items called blat, that if you sell them you get 30,000 gold each. So I do want money, but I'm going to get a lot more money than I actually care for. And the reason for this is actually more of an extension of that blat glitch. And I don't know how much you know about this, Magus, but I need to focus here just a little bit. If you have some time to maybe try and explain it, I can cover this stuff later, but I just need to make sure I get the initial setup.
Yes, I do know the blat glitch in itself, where you essentially make the game think you sell an item you don't have, by moving your menu cursor in a certain way, and then you end up selling an item, like I said, you don't have, which will give you an enormous amount of money, but you gotta be careful with that too, because if you sell a bad number of that item you don't have, then the game will softlock. So you gotta sell very specific amounts of items you, well, basically created. Now what Yaga's gonna do is an extension of that, like you mentioned. Not only is he gonna get an enormous amount of money, but he's also gonna make it so that he can have more than one stack of an item. Which I gotta admit, I don't actually know how that works, but that will probably be explained after the fact. What he's gonna do in order to get more items later on is he's gonna buy a bunch of equipment here as well, because we're going to be using a glitch called the trash glitch, which effectively makes it so normally in Secret of Mana you can only have 4 of an item in a stack, but if you trash items when you are in a certain position on the screen with the character, and it will start actually manipulating the stacks of items you have, and it will make it so that you can have, instead of 4 max, you can have 8. The game was actually designed to have that many, I believe, even, but it got limited before release for some reason, I guess memory. But yeah, you will notice right now you already see 2 barrels, which you shouldn't.
Yes, 1 stack is normally the limit on how many stacks of items you can have. The highest number you actually see in your inventory is 7.
Indeed. But the game can function normally. If you have 8, it will just display 0 instead.
Indeed. Alright, I'm almost done here.
Yep. This will take a while because, like, normally in a normal speedrun you would just like get money real quick and then the essentials, but since we're doing the solo character run here, we need a bit more of preparation for the entire game because with only 1 character we need to make sure that we have enough resources to make it through.
Indeed. I'm almost done here. Now I'm going to equip some stuff and throw it away. Oops. 2, 3...
Yep. So the positioning here is actually kind of essential. You have to be in a very specific position on the screen in order for this to work. And the game essentially, the more you trash, the further it goes through where you are in the ring menu currently on your items. So it will first manipulate the first stack, then the second one, and so on and so forth. So Yaga bought, I believe, 2 of an item is what you bought for the boy, is that right?
Yes, 2 each. Or each consumable item stack.
If you trash equipment with the boy and have a stack of 2 and it manipulates that stack, you will actually get 8. But with the girl and the sprite, it would actually work differently because of the way, well, they are pretty much set in the game's memory. But yeah, if you trash do that trash glitch, you can manipulate a stack of 2 to evolve underflow into a stack of 8 items, which is very, very handy. I believe for the girl it would be 4, and for the sprite it would be 6, if that is right.
Yes, and as you may notice, because 6 is not normally a number you can reach in your inventory for the amount of items, This solo cactus sprite actually cannot do that equipment trashing glitch and effectively replenish all items on the fly. The sprite cannot do that. So it does change the run up quite a bit. In fact, there's actually quite a bit of difference between the three types of solo cactus runs, where the boy, he just has the highest physical attacks, and he also has the easiest time to replenish items in the inventory, just kind of on the fly with glitches. Whereas the lady is kind of in the middle between the sprite and the boy on that. She can still replenish the items in the inventory, but she is a bit more restricted to do that earlier, because she needs to have a stack of 4. And the sprite, well, unless you preset it up via the solo character challenge run or solo boy run, so to speak, or just generally if you don't use the boys menu for setting up at least a stack of 6 for the sprite, you will not actually get that. So, plot-wise, we actually are meeting here Watts, which is the blacksmith of the dwarves here, and he is going to forge our sword up to level 2. Now we have a slightly stronger weapon, as well as the ability to start leveling up the weapon towards level 2. Alrighty, and the way we actually get multiple stacks of a specific item in our inventory is by... So those corrupted items, the blats that we sell in order to get a lot of money, the idea of those is that they are not regular items in the sense that they don't usually allow you to get them, and thus the game actually does improperly truncate those items from your inventory. And because it does that, well, I guess the short version in the end is that the game just does not rearrange your inventory to, like, move all the items to the highest number in the end. It basically just kind of generates holes in your inventory that you can then fill with new stacks of items, because the game goes, slot 1, is that an empty item slot or an item that you want to buy? If no, check the next slot, and so on. Because as soon as the game finds an empty item slot in your inventory, or an item of the same kind, it will just put that item that you tried to buy into that inventory slot. So effectively, we have a barrel in item slot 4, and we delete the blood from item slot 3. So then we just buy another barrel, and it will put that barrel in item slot 3, because that's kind of what it finds before the next slot, so to speak. It's not as complicated as I make it sound, I'm just terrible at explaining it, unfortunately. Oh well. That's fine.
I understood it, so it's all good.
So, other than that, we witnessed a little bit of a theater where they'd kind of scammed us out of 150 gold, but we kind of could even pay off much more than that, but the game doesn't allow us to, so we just take our 150 gold back and I guess be more smug about it. Either way, after upgrading the sword as well as witnessing the theater here in the dwarven village, we get to fight the Tropicalo. Also, something I forgot to do is I want to upgrade my equipment, so these weapons are significantly stronger than... these armor pieces are significantly better than the ones I had before. So, I actually did a little bit of a safety measure earlier, where I did equip the armor before entering the Dwarven Cave. And even though those armor pieces don't give us a whole lot of defense, the way it ends up working out is that your evasion, which is kind of a bit of a mislabel, it's more of a whether the enemy gets a high or a low damage roll concept. It does not work if you don't have at least one item equipped in each one of the 3 inventory slots, that is armor, headgear and accessory. So now that we have one thing equipped in each inventory slot, we now will be able to, well, just effectively take as little damage as it gets at this point. It is a very simple, basic math system where you just subtract the number of damage you take from, or the defense you have, minus whatever damage the enemy is trying to deal to you, and that's the final number of damage you take. So we have pretty solid defense at this point, but the more important part is actually the power wrist. The power wrist accessory gives us not just a little bit more defense, but also it gives us +5 strength, which effectively translates to 5 more damage. Also, I will need to know the name for the sprite. As mentioned before, you have still time to donate for the names. In this case, the sprite is pretty much over right now. Sorry, I forgot to announce that before. And the lady is coming up very soon after that. So, if you'd like to still donate for the lady, you have time, but the sprite is now closed. Do we have any names?
We do not have any names.
Alrighty, so we're just gonna go ahead and name the sprite here SG Life. Or SGL. The shorter the name, the better, actually. Alrighty, and this is now our second party member that joined us. The sprite is pretty much the opposite side of the boy. The boy is pretty much entirely a physical fighter, whereas the sprite is a mage. The physical capabilities being a bit on the weaker side. Not entirely useless, but on the weaker side. Also, I'm going to do a little bit of another shenanigan thing here. So, I'm actually going to equip the sprite with the bow, and then I'm unequipping the sprite so he, or they, whatever, is going to die a bit easier later. For the solo challenge run, I usually knock out the other characters so they don't accidentally help me. So, unequipping the armor means the sprite will take more damage, but more importantly, the way I unequip the armor actually also simultaneously unequipped the bow. You might think, but the sprite still has the bow equipped, I can see it clearly right here. Well, let's put it this way, the game still thinks the sprite does not have the bow equipped, and thus the boy can't also equip the bow, so effectively I can have multiple bows if I want to. It's a little bit strange, but hey, that's fine. So the reason why I'm going to give the sprite a bow is quite simple. I don't want the AI control characters to help me. Sometimes they just attack anyways, and it's more of a lenient type of challenge run in my book anyways. So what I like to try and do is I like to keep the other characters I don't use in the challenge runs at the lowest possible level. And that does include, in this case, the sprite just being at level 1 for the entirety of the game. It's not a requirement in my book, but at the same time, it's just for style points. Also, I do want to have the sprite knocked out before we go anywhere here. The sprite does not have a whole lot of defense, and these enemies deal pretty good damage as you can see. So, good night. Also, before we go into this next room, we're gonna save, because one of the big things about Secret of Mana is it's a game you can play with multiple people, and the awesome thing about that is that it allows you to, well, help each other in case somebody gets knocked out. Now, the catch is here that I have only one character. Oh my goodness. There we go. The catch is here, I only have one character to, well, do the fighting, and that means if I get knocked down to the floor, come on, start running, I will not be able to recover from that easily. In fact, it's going to be pretty tough to, well, recover from anything that might just kill me, since you don't really have any traditional invulnerability frames. You do have invulnerability frames, but they are not the usual ones you see in games normally. And enemies can just effectively combo you by just hitting you repeatedly, and there's nothing you can do in the meantime. Nice, we got the boss first try. Alrighty, did we get a name for the lady in the meantime?
Look, fresh real quick. And no, she is nameless.
Alrighty, in this case, we're going to go with the old tradition of just go, 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 go. Because that makes the most sense. Alrighty, for the lady, kind of as with the sprite, I'm going to give her the bow and then unequip her. That way she will, I need to stand on a specific spot on the screen in order to do that. That way she will have the least chance of trying to help me here, as well as get knocked out quicker than usual. And there we go. That's pretty much it. I'm gonna make her sleep for a while longer than she would normally sleep. Come on. There we go. And now we are doing a solo character challenge run. Now, some things to mention. I try to do these solo challenge runs with just one character as much as possible, but there's certain things that are just not necessarily reasonable to avoid in a lot of cases. What I mean with this is that here, ghosts actually absorb enemy projectiles like arrows from the bows. Wow. And it's not reasonably possible to have them out of the way all the time, and I don't just want to run into the arrows, obviously, especially since enemies can deal a lot of damage and just combo me to death really easily. So it's kind of a bit more of a lenient thing in these cases. So I just try to not necessarily take advantage of it, but at the same time I'm not going to actively avoid or prevent enemies or ally ghosts from absorbing projectiles.
You mean you don't reset when they absorb a projectile? Wow.
Nope, that would be silly. Similarly, if the other characters accidentally kill an enemy and or level up, I'm not gonna consider this run to be invalid. There's just a lot of little things that can happen. And especially in a marathon type setting, I don't necessarily want to just reset for every little thing like that. Because there's a lot of things that can legitimately go wrong beyond that. Like these wolves here, these wolves can attack quick enough that they might just combo me unless I'm being really careful about it. By the way, I'm trying to level up the sword here to level 2, which is why I'm killing more enemies along the way before we get to the next boss. From the bows, not the boys. Yeah.
I mean, the voice is also correct.
I suppose? Also, pathfinding of AI, especially ghost characters, is a bit strange. So here we are going to encounter 2 more wolves, and these wolves are dangerous, so I'm just going to prematurely equip a barrel. So barrels are pretty much the most overpowered item in this game. However, if you play this game casually, most likely you never learned the true power of barrels, because, well, they are pretty expensive in the early parts of the game, and later you actually can't really buy them until the very last vendor anymore. So it's very likely you never really experimented with them. But what they effectively do is 2 things. Regular enemies do no longer recognize you as a character, and they just, well, don't acknowledge you are there if you have a barrel equipped. And 2, you actually prevent all physical damage from occurring. Which means spells, like spells that you can cast yourself with your own characters, they will still get to hit you, but enemies will actually, with physical attacks, no longer be able to hurt you in any capacity. So bosses will still recognize the character that is in a barrel. They still see you, so to speak, as opposed to regular enemies. However, they often have like physical ranged abilities or physical like skills, so to speak, that you can't just completely deny by the use of a barrel. And upcoming here we get to the Spiky Tiger. Now in other glitched speedruns you would just do a weapon overcharge attack and one-shot Spiky Tiger. However, that is not an option for a solo character. So that's another way on how solo character challenge runs are restricted compared to, well, more traditional speedruns, where this one here we actually have to fight more or less legitimately. Well, I say more or less because we have a lot of barrels to use. And barrels do have another property that I haven't even touched on. Whenever you equip a barrel, you actually briefly attack everything around you in a really strange way. Like, it kind of makes sense, or, well, it almost makes sense, let's put it this way. If you, well, equip a barrel, then you could imagine the characters equipping a barrel so violently that they just smash everything around them, which is kind of what happens. but at the same time the attack hitbox of equipping a barrel is super weird. If you face up or down, it is a tiny hitbox in the middle of your character. If you face left or right, it is a weird hitbox just left to the or right of your character. It's really strange. Also, I'm standing near the head of the spiky tiger because I want him to try to eat the boy here. That is the idea, because that way, that is the least danger spiky tiger can pose to us. Plus the barrel attack actually conveniently also hits the enemy. So worth noting, barrel attack actually does hit the enemy for however much percentage your bar in the bottom left is charged up. So the bar in the bottom left is like a percentage right now. That is your stamina bar. And the short version of it is you don't really deal any realistic or any good damage at all if you have less than 100%. 99% of the stamina bar does not mean you deal 99% of the weapon's attack power. No, it's more like 99% is about 50% of your damage, so you might as well wait for just a little bit longer until your weapon is charged up to 100%. Yes, barrels are very expensive, 900 gold from Nico, which is why you probably never really use them casually. Alrighty, and here we defeat the spiky tiger without too much trouble, because barrels are just ridiculously powerful. So that flame breath from spiky tiger earlier is actually considered a physical ability and can be entirely blocked by the barrel. He would also have a fire bouquet spell, which actually is a spell because, well, it can be cast by the lady, thus it actually does go straight through the barrel and would damage me. And I would have to kind of, well, work around that. So, however, Spiky Tiger with a bunch of barrels is pretty easy to deal with. There's going to be a boss coming up very soon that is not nearly as easy to deal with the solo character challenge run of the boy, and that actually might be one of the trickier ones to try and, well, get completed. In the meantime, if my allies die here somewhere along the way, I don't mind, because I don't need to cannon travel, which would require my allies to be alive. Otherwise they can't be shot out of a cannon, I guess, if they're ghosts. I suppose it makes sense. Either way, navigating AI through terrain is notoriously difficult. Let me put it this way, for how little code there is for the AI to, or how they behave, and there actually being options for further, like, changing how they behave, it's actually kind of impressive of how reasonably well it works overall. However, part of learning how to speedrun this game is learning how to manipulate your AI control characters so they don't get stuck everywhere. So you would think, oh, solo character challenge run does not have nearly as much trouble with that. And that is only true if, and only if, we get to do a true solo character challenge run in the end. And that is actually a donation incentive. If you'd like to see the boy being completely alone in the Mana Fortress, there's a donation incentive that you can meet for this game here. Where we would be doing that. So you still have plenty of time until that needs to be achieved. So here we are. Also, this is a little tadpole enemy, and let's put it this way. The little tadpole, the purple thing, pink, it has 600 HP total. And the important thing to note about tadpole is once you deal 50% of its health and damage, as in 300, it will transform into this little biting lizard thing. If you somehow manage to deal all 600 damage, or the remainder of Tadpole's HP before it goes below half, like at least 301 damage, so to speak, in one swing, you will be able to skip Phase 2. Phase 2 here has 777 HP, plus it can heal itself 3 times for about 190 HP each, so you're dealing above, well, a bit over 1000 damage. there's not really any way to speed this up, unless you use multiple cactus and glitches to, like, one-shot it. But, well, we don't have such options, so we just stay here and swing until we win.
Yeah, fortunately the AI is pretty simple in that as long as you keep a perfect distance here, it's never gonna move. And you could also try to like trap him in the top right. He will keep jumping away if you get too close. If you go into a bad spot here, it'll actually try to eat you.
Yep.
Which is not very fun.
Yeah, in any cardinal direction away from the little guy here, he will just tongue you and stun you and eat you and then spit you out again for a bunch of damage. And, well, as long as you just stay in one spot, that's pretty much never going to happen that way. Alrighty, we are level 7 and that is just enough in order to take care of the next boss. Usually. Not always. We'll see.
Usually it's fine.
Yeah, the next boss is kind of where the solo challenge run actually gets really sketchy, let's put it that way. Alrighty, where to begin? So first of all, we find Undine here, or Undine? I don't know, you pronounce it how you will. Either way, this is the water elemental, and it will teach the sprite offensive magic spells, and the lady buffs and healing spells. We are not going to use any of those, except for the sprite spell very briefly, in order to open up a passage into the Earth Temple in the Dwarven village. So that's going to be what we will want to do in just a moment here. Which is also why we kind of need the sprite to be alive until a little bit later. Just a little bit. So, normally once you get the spells in Seeker of Mana, if you play this game casually, spells are insanely powerful. Like, they are just crazy good. And if you try to not use offensive spells against enemies, you will probably struggle, although it is very doable, well, as I guess I'm going to demonstrate. There is a certain caveat to that coming up, but, well, you will see in just a moment. So, cannon travel. I need to have the other two characters alive in order to use it. If they're not alive, the cannon travel guy will tell me, hey, no ghosts allowed! I'd have to say it's more of a limitation of how the game handles, like, animation and objects, rather than it being a gameplay story thing, but I always like to mention that, well, ghosts in this game, they cannot go through walls, so they are corporeal to a certain extent, but at the same time, apparently they cannot get propulsed by cannons? I'm not entirely sure how to explain that. Alrighty, so I'm going to save here because this next boss has a decent chance of just straight up killing me, unless I manage to mash the button really well. You will know very soon what that's about. But before that, here is the entrance, and this is one of these examples where, unless you do some arbitrary script execution, you will kind of need these other two characters in order to open up certain passages and pathways with their spells. That's kind of the extent of what I need them for. Other than that, I do not need them. Also here, these goblins are pretty strong, as the sprite and the lady just kind of know this, of course. So, we need to hit 2 switches left and right in order to open up the passage through the center. Then we just run through a Earth Temple here, very briefly. And by the way, these goblins are an excellent example of enemies. If they catch the boy in any capacity, we're probably dead, because they attack quick enough and also usually just surround you with too many cactus at the same time that they will just combo you to death. So if I make any, like, movement error or mistakes in that capacity, I will probably die. So this goblin here is going to wake up, take a jump back, and then spawn an ally. I can try to delay jumping across the gap here just a little bit until after it spawns an ally, which often will prevent the goblin on the left from spawning. But, well, it's not that big of a deal, I guess. Another thing here is I actually need the sprite alive for the next room here, Because otherwise this cutscene is not going to play. It will just tell us, hey, we probably need to take care of him. With him, they mean the sprite. They don't care about the lady being a ghost. But you need the sprite alive for specifically this cutscene, so the sprite can actually hit Gnome in order for us to go further through. But living cactus can go through walls. I mean, you're not wrong. So here... Oh, okay. That's not usually how that starts, but I'm okay with this. So this is the Fire Gigas. The Fire Gigas spells always hit all 3 cactus, with one exception, I guess. Alright, we should be fine here. Let's see. Alright, we got this. So, alrighty. Let me explain real quick. So you see, the sprite took 110 damage. We don't have 110 HP on the boy. To be fair, he takes a little bit less damage than that, but same difference. Either way. Fire Breath is a physical ability, which means I can prevent it from dealing damage via the use of a barrel. Here we have Fireballs. This is a spell, and I have to do this very specific maneuver here. I have to open up the menu after the spell hits me, but before the damage gets displayed. That is a very, very small window of opportunity to open up my menu like that. And let's put it this way. It is easy to mess up because I'm just mashing the button to hope I get it. And for the boy, it's actually reasonably consistent, curious enough to get that pretty much every time as long as I mash well enough. Curious enough, because Seeker of Mana actually operates on a 5-frame cycle rule, it just so happens that if you try to do the same maneuver with the sprite and the lady, you can still do it, but it is slightly less reliable. So sorry, I need to focus on actually mashing the button, because these spells here normally hit all 3 of your characters, so they are balanced with their damage around hitting all 3 characters. The boy takes over 200 damage from one spell. If I take damage from a spell, I'm dead. Which means if I mess this up, this damage denial, so to speak, I am not going to survive.
Yeah, you can do this damage cancelling essentially almost with any item, but he's choosing Barrel specifically because you don't have any further animations, and if Fire Gigas would decide to cast spells quickly one after another, he might not have an opportunity to, like, let's say if he used the candy to do it, he might not get the opportunity to do the mash if Fire Gigas is too fast.
Yes, pretty much exactly like that. Worth noting, the Fire Gigas does have limited MP. Most bosses have 99 MP, and each spell does have the associated cost for it. Oops, so fine. Fire Breath is my favorite because it's a physical ability, so I just use a barrel anywhere before it hits, and I'm just not gonna get hit, so that's good. Also, actually, I prefer the Fire Gigas flying away, so I can charge up my weapon to level 2, which is 100% more damage. And we got him, nice.
That's pretty good, nice.
Boy. So yeah, this is one of the scarier parts of the solo character challenge run, because it is really easy to mess up getting hit by these guys. Also, if you try to do this glitchless with the boy, actually, I wonder, chat, what do you think? Is opening up the menu and using an item on your character in order to deny damage from a spell, is that an exploit, a glitch, or is that something that you would consider to be intended? What is your opinion on that? Omega says it's a feature. So story-wise here, we get the next elemental spirit to help us out. This is Gnome, that gives us earth-based spells. And we also seal the Mana Seed of Earth, which is, well, just a little bit more damage, a little bit more defense for the boy, which is actually quite nice.
In a normal speedrun you skip actually activating this, don't you?
Actually, yeah, that's a good point. So the game, in fact, never checks whether you sealed the Mana Seed of Earth or not. So you literally can just grab Gnome and be out of here without ever activating the Mana Seed of Earth. Casually, I really don't recommend that for two reasons. For one, you can't level up your spells beyond level 1 if you don't seal the Mana Seed of Earth at this point. So you're quite limited if you do that. And for two, well, it does make you slightly stronger, which is actually the main reason I'm doing it here in this case. Alright, I'm upgrading the axe for using in just a little bit here on the next boss. One of my favorite aspects about solo character challenge runs is that I actually use a variety of weapons on various bosses in order to defeat them. The sword just happens to be, well, on average the most useful for a lot of bosses, but it's actually not technically the strongest. The spear level 2 is actually slightly more powerful than the sword at level 2. Very slightly. But for trying to go fast, it's not quite worth leveling up the spear to level 2 in the meantime. That would take me more time than it saves.
Yeah, the weapon leveling, if an enemy, I believe, is the same level as you or lower, it doesn't give as much weapon experience. No, just if it's lower, right? Then it doesn't give as much weapon experience as it would if it's higher level than you or the same level as you.
Yes, that is
yeah.
true.
So as soon as you get too many levels, which at this point we kind of have, it's gonna get harder for him to get weapon experience as well.
Alrighty, and the chat votes have come in. Exploit, but not a glitch. Exploit, it's legal. Same as using the Mitch Mallet, so if you allow that, indeed. So, hang on. I'm gonna go ahead and use 2 barrels. So all my barrels now have a stack of 2, and standing 2 in this specific spot just kind of makes this a convenient equipment trashing spot, which is why I'm doing this, specifically here. I have various points in the game where I just know where to stand and align myself with the environment in order to do equipment trashing and effectively refresh the amount of items I have in my inventory. I can do it on the fly, but if I can just align myself with the terrain, it is just more convenient. But yeah, for denying damage, somebody mentioned that if you play this game casually, you will just do it at some point, and I do think that is very true, because let's say, whether it's intended or not, you see one of your allied characters has really low health and they get hit by a spell. Of course, you're just going to give them an item and heal them. It just makes the most sense, why wouldn't you? And consequently, you just happen to also deny the damage from the spell that they get hit by, as well as heal them. So, I feel like I pretty much agree. It might not be inherently an intended mechanic, but at the same time, it's something that pretty much every casual player does, one way or another. In glitchless speedruns, we do allow, well, denying damage from these kinds of sources as well, which I do feel like is kind of makes the most sense, because it's something that you just do casually as well. It might not be entirely intended, but it is something you just do in casual play most of the time anyways. So, of course, this is not exactly a question for a run here where we are using glitches anyways, but if I do solo character glitchless runs, that sometimes kind of crops up in my mind. The thing is, if you want to do, or want to complete this game without denying damage as a solo character, you would have to grind for like half an hour in order to survive the spells from the Fire Gigas, for example. So that's pretty extreme. Alrighty, so... okay. So... I'm gonna explain the boss here, and then we actually have plenty of time to talk about other things, because this is going to be a really lengthy boss fight. Alrighty, so this is Wallface. A few things about this thing. It has 3 parts. The center piece is what we need to defeat in order to defeat the boss. That is the center eye, if you will. Then the eye on the left is the one that I want to kill often, because as you could just see, the eye on the left is the one that heals the center. And that is a problem if you want to ever, well, get to kill the center eye, to say the least. Now, worth noting here, the spells are not as dangerous as the fire gears because they, well, they don't deal as much damage. They are always targeted at a single character, so I will actually take reasonable damage and survive the damage if I ever get hit, so it's not that big of a deal. Either way, the left eye has 3 things it can do. Leaden Glare, which is a physical ability. Healing, or Pure Water, which heals the center eye for quite a lot. And the Eye Beam, I forget what the beam spell is called, which is actually what I want to see. Leaden Glare, I have to use a barrel in order to deny the damage. It's not much damage, but it prevents me from hitting the wall for a while, so it just makes more sense to deny the damage instead. And the Eye Beam literally just doesn't hit me because the attack hitbox of the beam actually spawns just beyond me. So it's not... I can't just stand here, basically. So the eye on the right only ever does 2 things. In chat, if you'd like to count, the eye on the right will cast up to 49 spells. Energy Absorb and Freeze. It's random which one it picks, but each one of these spells costs 2 MP. The eye on the right has 99 MP total. Flash Beam it's called. And, well, it will eventually run out of MP. And the unfortunate thing is, in a solo character challenge run, I usually don't deal enough damage to kill the center before the eye on the right runs out of, well, runs out of MP anyways. I'm just not dealing enough damage. If you get lucky, actually, where you manage to kill the eye on the left quick enough before it ever gets to heal the center, the boy actually does have a decent chance of being able to kill the center before the eye on the right runs out of MP. So that is possible. However, if you do a solo character challenge run with the lady, she will pretty much never be able to kill the center eye before the eye on the right is out of MP. So it's just a war of attrition, if you will. Alrighty, the eye on the left of course also has 99 MP, each healing costs only 2 MP, so waiting until that would run out of magic, well that would take forever, so yeah, let's not do that.
Yeah, so the strategy is basically forcing Revivify because it costs way more MP, right?
Not quite actually. Revivify is an ability from the center eye which all has its own MP pool. It just kind of happens to be incidental that each one of the parts has its own MP pool, and consequently the eye in the center is the one that casts Revivify. It costs 10 MP, and it has 99 MP, which means it actually only can cast Revivify 10 times in order to revive the... 9 times in order to revive the eye on the left. So I actually have to kill the eye on the left 10 times total in order for it to stay dead. Now, there's also the question, of course, of why don't you just kill both eyes? Because that eye on the right is just casting on you the entire time. It's really annoying. But yeah, at the bottom of this arena, just south, there's spikes. And the implication is that once you kill both eyes, on the left and the right, and the wall will start pushing you towards the bottom, all the way. And if the wall reaches a certain coordinate, Y coordinate so to speak, you will die. There's not even any damage that gets displayed, you are just straight up dead. So that's kind of what happens. Also, I just threw away some equipment there in order to replenish the amount of barrels I have in my inventory by standing in a specific spot. So yeah, I used quite a few barrels here. So I would like to point out I've gotten pretty lucky for how much the eye on the left ended up healing. It only healed really at the beginning, which didn't have much of an impact. But every time it got revived, it has a chance to heal, basically 1 in 3. And I don't think it has done that until now. Well, I say that and now it just heals. But yeah, worth noting, the reason why I'm using the axe rather than the sword is the axe has slightly higher base damage than the sword, and because I don't have time to charge up my weapon anyways, I'm just using the axe for swings. The sword would deal slightly less damage. That's kind of the only reason. Also, I cannot open up menus while I am charging up a weapon. That is probably important to mention. You have to be not charging any weapons, you have to be on your feet and have to be ready, otherwise you cannot, well, access your menu. Alrighty, and... well, this is just kind of the entire boss fight. We just whack away until it goes... oh, one more thing! Ha! In case you're wondering why I'm sometimes attacking and not hitting, well, there's another fun mechanic. This is the first boss in the game that has evasion. What this means is the game just decides, you know, I know your weapon attack hitbox connected with the hurt box or something of the enemy, but you're just not gonna hit today, or with this attack. And that's just how it is. This is probably the biggest problem this game has, in my opinion. It does not give you any feedback that you're actually, like, missing with your attack swing in terms of enemy calculation evasion, rather than you're physically missing the eye or something like that. So it's about a 40% chance to miss, in case you're wondering, so it's pretty high. And yeah, the game does not do a particularly good job of explaining that to you in any capacity. So, a lot of people think Secret of Mana has janky hitboxes because it seems like they miss all the time. Well, let me tell you, this game does have janky hitboxes, but not for the reason you think it does. That's kind of the short version. I'm actually surprised I haven't gotten hit by a single spell so far. Usually I mess up once or twice by now.
Why do you have to jinx yourself like that?
I mean, on this boss it's okay. I would just take about half my HP in damage and that's it. And yeah, unfortunately evasion is no fun. I remember using javelin and bow on this fight because you can see your projectile sticking into the eye, and I figured maybe that's why I'm not hitting as a kid, so yeah, that's the thing. Either way, everybody watching here, there's a certain donation incentive that you can reach that probably hasn't been met yet. We can make this a true solo character challenge run in the end, where you will see just a boy and no one else at the very end of the game, throughout the Mana Fortress. So if you'd like to see that, there is a certain incentive associated with that. Just as a heads up, yeah.
That is a pretty cool incentive, I mean.
Yeah, very frosty. No, I think... how many barrels did we use? I don't know. But the eye on the right is probably out of magic relatively soon. You could keep count of it, but... no. I'm not good at counting, especially while doing commentary. I'm a bit too far to the left, I'm not sure this is going to work.
Shouldn't it be 48 barrels by now?
4 times 4, 16, 32. 32 barrels. Oh, the eye in the center still had MP left to revive. Oh, wow, okay. This is one of the rare times where we actually did manage to kill the center before the eye on the right ran out of magic.
World record pace, right?
I mean, technically. I mean, as I mentioned before, this is more of a challenge run than a speed run. There's not exactly much competition in this. I don't think I know of anybody else who runs this kind of thing single segment. Like, there's other people on YouTube and such that have done solo character challenges. I'm not the first one, I'm not the only one. But I think I'm the only one who does those kind of more or less on a regular basis. Which, worth noting.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, I forgot the name. I actually recently was just looking up solo challenge runs for Secret Mana on YouTube, and I saw somebody who was doing a low-level solo character challenge run with the lady on YouTube, and actually managed to glean some strategies off of them. So I wanted to give him a
Nice.
shout out, and I forgot the name. That
You know, I can check real quick.
That would be nice. It is a relatively small channel, so it's like low-level solo challenge run or so. Either way, the Gorgon Bolt strategy is the one that I managed to get from them, so it's pretty neat. So,
Is it? Sorry. Is it in
ahead.
German?
It's not actually, though.
I found a German one too.
That's interesting. I wouldn't know about one actually. Maybe they have some more strategies I can steal. So here actually going to Pandora Castle. There is a sword orb and a spear orb right here. And these orbs are actually very, very useful, since they, well, allow us to deal quite a lot more damage by upgrading the weapons to level 3. And especially if you have played this game casually, you might fondly remember the spear level 3 because it also stuns enemies for quite a long time, which is pretty amazing. Alrighty, so kinda like before, just going to knock out my allies so they are not accidentally going to help me. Oh, thank you very much. So, maybe a little bit of trivia in the meantime. Secret Mana actually has various translations, and one of the more interesting things, if you have played this game in German, you will actually have referred to the sprite as a she, because they call her the Koboldin, which is basically, well, the female version of a kobold. And in English, the sprite is referred to as a he. Now, the reason why that's kind of a discrepancy there, when you think, well, doesn't every translation have the same source material? Yes. But the thing is, in Japanese, the sprite does not actually have a gender associated with them, which means that it's just gender neutral. And the curious thing I feel like is, in the remake for this game, they decided to just kind of stick to the original translation, and now that the gender-neutral terms are a bit more well-known, and also accepted, I suppose, they actually just stuck to they, which I thought was actually very curious, because for quite a long time I had no idea that stuff even existed. So, the learning experience. In case you're wondering, in French it is also, the sprite is also male in the Super Nintendo version. Don't know about the remake. Never tried that. In French, anyways. Alrighty, so, here we need to retrieve the mana seed of water because it has been stolen. Nobody told us that it was stolen, we just happen to know it is here. And also I'm picking up the whip here. The whip is kind of really nice, since it will allow me to deal with another boss later. I will actually use it as a weapon, which is a bit unusual, I suppose. And this next boss here is Kilroy. Kind of like pretty much every boss from here on out. It has about 40% chance to evade my attacks. There's nothing I can do about that. I will just miss with a lot of attacks that I know connected, even though I will stand pretty far away and it looks like my weapon clearly does not connect with the boss. So trust me, this can hit, it's just a miss because of the game deciding to be a miss. Oh, that is nice. This is very nice. So Lunar Boost actually removes the enemy's evasion. And this means I will always hit with my weapon as swing. So this is great. I love it when Kilroy uses Lunar Boost. But already faded, so back to chances to miss. Chokoshura. Maybe? I have to admit I don't remember. It might be. You can check the Gorgon Ball part where they let the Gorgon Ball charge up and down the arena and just hit them. That's kind of where
Okay.
it was.
That's my commentary duty.
I just got Moogled. If the Kilroy hits you with a physical attack, you get Moogled. A Moogled character cannot attack, and you're effectively helpless, you're just running around. But it does wear off with the status after a while. Also, it looks pretty cute, so it's not that terrible. Just a little bit of a time loss. Also, it's kind of funny that this guy goes on a unicycle once he is below half HP. I'm also specifically using the spear, because the spear has slightly more base damage than the sword, also a bit more reach, so that's just more convenient. Oh, another lunar boost. Very unusual that he casts that more than once per fight. Lunar boost nerf. He does gain 25% more attack power when he casts lunar boost, so he does deal more physical damage. But because of the implication of me actually hitting Kilroy every time I attack, I'm never gonna get hit during the lunar boost. It is a bit of a weird spell. If you use lunar boost yourself as a character, your evasion getting negated effectively means the enemies are always going to land a high damage roll. So there's the concept of high and low damage rolls, and that is kind of what evasion for player characters is for, rather than anything else. Okay, so it is Choco Shura on YouTube who basically taught me that strategy of Gorgon Bowl. We will get to see that in this run a little bit later. So shout out to them, thank you very much. Also thank you Almagus for looking that up. It's also Twitch plays a ton of randomizers. Oh yeah, I've seen a bunch of randomizers on the channel. I have to admit that I didn't even check the Twitch. Alrighty, so I needed to keep the sprite and the lady alive here in order to cannon travel. And oh boy, we're coming up to Jabberwocky. Now, remember how I said that if the Fire Gigas ever hits me with a spell, I'm dead, because he deals about 200 damage? Well, Jabberwocky has a spell that deals about 400 damage. Now, there's a problem with Jabberwocky's spell. That is, Fire Gigas has a fancy animation whenever it is casting a spell, so you know exactly when a spell is coming, and in a lot of cases you even know which spell is coming based on the animation. That is not true for Jabberwocky coming up. Jabberwocky has no animation